right, we've got another terrific guest here at the Clinton Global Initiatives here in New York City during Climate Week NYC. If you could say who you are and where you're from.
Great. I'm Kinnari. I'm from New York, and I work with an organization called Only One, and we combine content, campaigns, and crowdfunding to advance ocean conservation.
Okay. So when you say conservation, what kind of projects are you thinking about?
So all of our work falls into three big areas. So we do a lot of work around marine protection, so trying to get large parts of the ocean protected, either in economic zones, country by country, or through the high seas. We've been doing a lot of work on the High Seas Treaty and trying to secure a global high seas treaty to govern areas outside of national jurisdiction. We do a fair amount of work on plastics and pollution, both at the beginning of the funnel, so regulating petrochemical plants and all of the components that are driving this insane amount of plastics in the world, as well as funding a lot of solutions at the end of funnel, so reclaiming plastic and preventing it from going into the ocean. And then the work that we're doing at CGI focuses on our effort to elevate the ocean as a climate solution, so investing in marine-based solutions to climate change.
So interesting, you've arrived at a point where it's about what commitment you're making here. So what commitment have you announced or are announcing here at the Clinton Global Initiatives?
Yep. So today at CGI, we're announcing the Blue Carbon Collective. And what that is an effort to help countries and communities scale their certified blue carbon projects. So there's significant demand for carbon credits globally, and there's significant attention on investing in nature-based solutions to climate change. However, there are very few projects, particularly in the ocean space, that have gone through that whole certification process. And so what we're doing with a range of partners is working with a cohort of communities and countries to help them develop their projects, get them certified, bring them to market, and really elevate the potential for marine-based solutions to climate. One big example of this would be mangrove forest. So mangroves can store 4 to 10 times as much carbon as terrestrial-based trees. They also provide incredible coastal resiliency benefits, up to the tune of about $65 billion a year in storm mitigation, and they're incredible allies for boosting biodiversity. But because we live on land, we tend to invest mostly in land-based solutions. So as big as the ocean is, it's still kind of the underdog in the climate space. And so what we are trying to do through our platform and through a range of partners is elevate these solutions in a way that can help scale them.
So I have to say that I absolutely loved prawns. I didn't eat red meat or even chicken, but I loved prawns. But I used to work for the UN Environment Programme, and then we had a report out on these mangroves and the seagrasses and the salt marshes and all the emissions they're collecting, and how much mangrove is cleared for shrimp farms. And I just thought, okay, I have to give up shrimps because I just can't look them in the face anymore, knowing what damage they do. Yeah. Mangroves
are being wiped out. At the end of the century, they're being wiped out about 1 to 2% global a year. And so when a mangrove forest is wiped down for shrimp farming or for other types of development, they go from being a carbon sink to a carbon source, and all that carbon, of course, is released back into the atmosphere. And so we are trying to create economic models that drive investment into these communities. And this is an important part, that the communities retain the ownership, retain the local governance, and see the economic benefits of those projects, because they are the ones that are most directly involved in maintaining and restoring these forests, but ensuring that we can create an economic model that helps to advance the protection of nature as opposed to wiping it out for other economic means.
Yeah. Yes, nature has always been sort of a free good, hasn't it, which we haven't really incorporated into our economic models as well as we could do. And I think giving value to it, but also remembering the spiritual value as well, not forgetting the other things that come from nature is a really good idea. What we've been asking some people here is on the general issue of climate change. There's a lot of anxiety, particularly among young people right now, about the climate crisis. Clearly, there are those who, I think a decreasing number of people who seem to want to deny that it even exists, that it's something to do with Martians or I don't know, a punk band somewhere or something like that. But are you generally optimistic about the fact that humanity could be able to solve this global climate crisis, emergency, however you want to term it?
I haven't heard the punk band.
Well, no, I was actually thinking off the top of my head, but it could be Elvis Presley's brother or something.
I think it would be easy for one to be pessimistic just looking at the headlines. Fires all around the world, incredible amount of people being displaced because of the climate crisis, gridlock in capitals all across the world as well. But I think you have to be an optimist because there's no other option, right? We have one future, we have one planet, and we have to start working together to fix it. And where I find sense of optimism is two places. One, young activists who really just understand this and the importance of this issue and are taking to the streets and pushing their leaders for policy change. And then young entrepreneurs who are finding innovative ways to solve this crisis. And I think in particularly some of the market-based solutions have been interesting. And we're seeing a fair amount from coral restoration to replacements for plastics to other types of energy. We're seeing a fair amount of innovation within that sector, and I'm hopeful that changes in policy will help to make that marketplace even more sustainable economically as we invest in that space.
Yes, good. And we can also learn from renewable energy. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when a unit of solar was $50, and now it's competitive.
Yeah, we've seen the green premium collapse, and it's on par.
Yeah.
And so, you need to make investment early on, and you need public and philanthropic capital to invest early on to bring those to a place where they can compete in the market. But we have gotten to that point.
Yeah. Good. So on We Don't Have Time, on our platform, we don't have time.org, people can engage and they can give warnings to organizations and individuals even, or even presidents, about things they think are going wrong. But we can also, on that platform, or if you're engaging in that platform, give people climate love, is what we call it, for doing things that are making a difference in the world, and in a sense patting them on the back and encouraging them to go further. Is there an organization or an individual that you feel deserves a bit of climate love right now for something that they are doing in the climate environmental space?
Of course. Well, first, you mentioned folks all over the world are facing climate anxiety, and one of our founding partners talks about anxiety being unmet emotion. And I think one of the best ways to deal with climate anxiety is to channel that into action. And so we've been working and been fortunate enough to work with partners all around the world who are taking action in their communities. And so the one that I would channel that love to is a group called Tsunami Watch, and Sam Benchikib, who's one of the founders, they're working in Indonesia. And so they grew up in Bali and just saw the beaches in Bali wrecked with plastic. And you find that about 80 to 90% of ocean-bound plastic comes through rivers. And so what they're trying to do is move upstream, literally, and they're putting trash barriers in these rivers all across Bali to stop plastic before it actually goes into the ocean and ends up in our food supply and wreaking havoc in marine environments. And so they've built about 100 of these barriers, and they're engaging the local community in the actual collection of this waste as well.
Okay.
It's a really terrific effort. It's called Tsunami Watch.
How do you spell it?
Yeah, it's SUNGAI and then Watch.
Okay.
And so only one we've been supporting through our small dollar donor community. We've been supporting their work to put new barricades all throughout rivers in Bali.
Yeah.
And we're just really it's such an innovative and sort of disruptively simple solution.
Yeah.
Of course, if you've got 80 or 90% of plastic coming through rivers, let's stop it in the rivers first.
Yeah.
And it just makes perfect sense. I mean, we do have to again move more upstream with policy changes, figure out the pricing dynamics of plastics, and really make plastic producers pay for the full impact of their products. But what they're trying to do is deal with the immediate problem at hand through these barriers.
And stop fossil fuel subsidies, because the fossil fuel subsidies also are making the virgin plastic cheaper.
Yeah. You have you have oil companies that invest about $200 billion into plastic production, expanding this over time. And so all across this issue, you have real challenges. So, for example, in the U.S., we have an area called Cancer Alley, which is in Louisiana. There's about 350 petrochemical plants, primarily outside of black and brown communities, and the cancer rate is 50 times the national average in those communities. And it's because we want to have free access to plastics that we use for a few minutes, and then that plastic is harming communities at the beginning of the life cycle where it's being produced and where these extractive facilities exist, and then at the end of the life cycle where it ends up being shipped out to other developing countries that don't have
Yep.
the proper management systems,
Yep.
where it ends up in our food supply. They're now finding, we're working with a partner in Europe that has recently found microplastics in blood. And
Yep.
so we're seeing the health impacts. And I think this is where people are starting to wake up to the issue. But an issue like plastics, yeah, it covers the climate crisis, it touches the ocean challenge that we're focused on, and the environmental justice issues. And so people are, again, to go back to what makes me optimistic, you have young people who, they won't touch plastic. Plastic has become the new smoking, and they're using reusable bottles and taking their own sort of lifestyle shifts, but we do need shifts in policy as well.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much for being with us. Congratulations on your work, and hopefully we'll see you maybe in a year or two from now and hear how it's going.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Such
okay.
an honor.
Okay.